Russia's crisis continues to drag on as they feel the effects of a declining oil price and the Western sanctions. Today we will talk about, is Saudi Arabia working with the US to crash Russia's economy? You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's get into this right away, how Russia's inflation rate exceeded 10% for the first time in more than 5 years, spurred by sanctions and the worst ruble collapse since 1998. Let's get into this first. You have to realize that a 10% inflation rate makes a very big difference on that individual citizen that is truly affected by this. Think about going to the store and every year things are not 2% as they should, so supposedly should be 2%. We're talking 10%. That would be 5 times more. And these are with the government's numbers. Even Russia and all countries around the world use their cooked books. But let's just go with that number of 10%. That is a significant rate and is definitely harming the wealth of the individual citizen. And that's where it is today. What will it be 3 months from now? What will it be 6 months from now? And that only time will tell. And also they're continuously mentioning that this is the worst collapse since 1998. That's when they had to default on their debt. That is essentially claiming bankruptcy. They do not want to have to go through this again. Of course, they're in a different position than they were back then. Definitely more partnership with China. We saw how China wants to help them out through this crisis. I got into that in other videos. So let's keep our eyes on this. They said this: consumer prices increased 10.4% this year, and the Federal Statistics Service in Moscow said today in an emailed statement, prices grew 0.9% in the week through that date, the most since April 2009. Now this is important because you need to understand, when you look at a country that is experiencing a hyperinflation, right now there are many countries experiencing very high rates of inflation or hyperinflation, and you look at what that does to the individual citizen, it is absolutely really bothersome to them when they are unable to invest. Businesses can't open up. You have a real big mix up in the environment, and this is not good for them in general, for the people, for the businesses, and the nation as a whole. But it affects the individual worse than it does the country or that government. And then right here, just wanted to get into basically the price growth compounded by the effects of a ban on imports of some foods imposed by Putin in retaliation for the sanctions on the US. And then they went to a 10% inflation rate. I want to connect that in to what we were warning about previously. Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered his government to curb rising vodka prices. This is out of the BBC. And this is what we're talking about when we have capital controls, wage control, price controls, all of these sort of controls that they put in place for whatever reason. The fact remains is that they're essentially believing that they are smarter than the natural forces of the market. This is not something that can be sustained for a long time, because when you put a control in place, what do you think is going to happen? Look at prohibition on alcohol. What happened there? All you did was open up a black market for those goods in order for it to be brought in from other countries, or basically a worse product is sold, a dangerous product in many cases. So this is not a good idea to put a ceiling on anything. If a individual commodity is too expensive, people will not buy that commodity. They will simply choose to replace it with something else. And all that's going to do is put out the farmers of that particular commodity, or the miners, or whoever it might be. You need to realize that people will make the choices based on the income that they have. If they can't afford something, then they're not going to buy it. If they have to go out and businesses are forced to pay a certain wage for people, or they're just going to have to fire people in order to stay in business. This is really a capitalist environment no matter where you live, and people or businesses are worried about their profits above all else. In my book, I talked about the oil shocks that were in the 70s, and I basically said that unrest in the Middle East promoted fear that the precious energy source would not be able to flow toward the West. As a result, oil prices quadrupled and had further negative effects on the economy. Now, this is loosely connected into what I'm speaking about today. I just wanted to show you how important oil prices are, and a shortage, or even the threat of a shortage, could mean the quadrupling in a price. We've seen it happen before. It could happen now. But what happens when there's a glut? We can have the price dropping significantly. But we also know that the price can be manipulated. So let's get into this information right here. And I've talked about it before, and we'll get into that in a moment. But look at oilprice.com and what they're saying. Analysis shows the reasoning is complex. It may go beyond simply taking down the price to gain back lost market share. So they're basically discussing all the different options, why this is occurring. And let's look at this. We're talking about the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro. He said, what is the reason for the United States and some U.S. allies wanting to drive down the price of oil? To harm Russia. And what have I been saying? Many believe the oil price plunge is the result of a deliberate and well-planned collusion on the part of the United States and Saudi Arabia to punish Russia and Iran for supporting the murderous Assad regime in Syria. Now, there are many reasons why they've done this, but I believe that they could definitely be a party to this. They could want to be hurting Russia specifically, but also Iran, and basically all of those others who are exporting oil, who make money off of that, and they want to harm them. And what a better way than to get them where it hurts, where their economy is making the profit, when they can pay off or work out a deal with Saudi Arabia and enabling them to push down the price. And that is obviously going to hurt them in a very, very strong way. It's working. Whether this is actually happening or not, we know specifically that it is working very well. And we even saw Putin admitting what they're doing here is in fact really successful. Let's go into this just very briefly. Wanted to note to you that I have a video talking about this already. If you haven't watched it, it's very important. In fact, if you Google Saudi Arabia oil and then you go to the videos area, you will definitely see that on the top. But you can just type in this, and I'll have it in the description below. It's well over 100,000 views already. So I'm very happy to see that this type of information is spreading out there, and people are in general very thankful for it. Let's get into this as well. Sliding oil prices leave socialist Venezuela on the brink of financial collapse. This is out of the Washington Times, talking about their president under international pressure for jailing opposition figures. Let's get into the main part here, is that when you have a nation that exports oil, that makes money from the oil, and all of a sudden that oil price goes down, they're going to be hurting. And when you don't have any other options or any other avenues to make money, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to have to really extend yourself out and go to extreme measures. And right here, they are in very big trouble. They are experiencing very, very, very high rates of inflation. And this is absolutely trampling the individual citizen. So this is another way to look at it when you want to know what could happen in Russia, when you then want to know what could happen in Iran and other places. And don't forget, places like the US could be really receiving this type of future, not in the not too distant future here. And I also wanted to mention this. This is North Dakota population hitting a record. You have other cities, other states actually declining as their cities go bankrupt, as people pull out and literally abandon everything there. You can see what's happening in Detroit, in different areas of Michigan, like Flint, Michigan, for example, where the city is basically just being abandoned. But then you look at North Dakota and they are doing well. Part of this is the boom in oil. You could see how much they're pumping from North Dakota, and they are apparently sitting on major reserves. And of course, the price is down right now. It could definitely drop significantly from this point, but we know that the world is highly dependent on oil, and commodities in general are real. So they hold value, whether it is something of a low value or a higher value. That's not really the point I'm trying to get to. We can just look at it and understand that this is valuable. So a country, a state, a city that has something of real value is going to be economically sound. People are moving out of areas where they know the jobs are not going to be, and they're moving into a place where they definitely are. So this is something to look forward to in the future, where we can sort of predict where if we wanted to buy, for example, real estate, or if we wanted to invest in something in particular, we need to see where the jobs are moving in, where the jobs are moving out. Something definitely to look into. And I just wanted to add this in to sort of link it all together, where you need to realize how important the price of oil is. Is it being manipulated? We have many statistics. We have many reasons to believe that it is. So again, we will continue to dig deeper into this and try to get the truth once and for all. I also wanted to just thank you all for joining me here on Christmas Day. I wanted to say Merry Christmas to you, and I also wanted to say Happy Holidays as well. And definitely wanted you to know that, I am here, definitely here in the middle of the night. In fact, recording this I believe it's about 3 a.m. at this point, but I need to get this information out to the public. I read these articles and just had to link them all together, put it together for you guys. So this is, my Merry Christmas present to all of you. Thank you for joining me here. I really appreciate all of the comments, all of the emails, all of the purchases of the book. I really thank those who send me the emails telling me that you purchased the book. It really means a lot to me. What I ask of you is that after you're done reading the book, don't let it sit on the bookshelf. Pass it on to your friends and family, to anyone who will read it. And it is very important. It should never sit on that bookshelf when you're done. I would really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Don't forget to become an insider. The Insiders is where I give out all my best intel for free. And that's available at themoneygps.com. Just scroll down to the bottom, fill in your email address, and you get occasional emails from me with good, short, concise info.